Let us know. Are we ready?
We're ready whenever you are.
Okay. We're going to open the meeting. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Design Review Committee. And glad to see that we do have a crowd here. I think this works best when citizens do participate in this process. We'll proceed with the roll call. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Committee Member Tomasello.
Here.
Vice Chair Groudon.
Here.
Chair Antleman.
Here. We're going to move forward to public communication. Public communications is a time set aside during the committee meeting for members of the public to address the committee on planning-related business other than scheduled agenda items. Persons wishing to address the committee during the public communication period of the meeting should fill out a speaker form prior to the committee reaching the point on the agenda. Do we have anybody here that wishes to speak?
There was one.
Okay, and you filled out a speaker card? Thank you. Lisa French?
Oh, right now? I was waiting for the agenda.
Oh, for the agenda.
Yeah,
Okay, this is just general comments. This is general comments, things that are not on the agenda. Okay. Okay, we're going to move forward with approval of meeting minutes for the 31st of March. Are there any edits or comments on the minutes? If none, may I have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve March 31st and April 21st meetings as presented. We can do them both, right? Yeah.
Okay. Steve, process that. We need a second?
And I just wanted to mention that I did go back and review the video, and I appreciated Netta's description of the motion and capturing those minutes accurately. So I'll second.
Thank you.
Clerk, could you proceed with roll call?
Yes. Committee Member Tomasello.
Yes.
Vice Chair Groudon.
Yes.
Chair Antleman.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is Project 14608, Conceptual Review. This is a Hilton Hotel. Has anybody had any ex parte communication
No.
on this? Okay. Could we please have staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be presenting this item. I'm Peter Gilly. I'm the Community Development Director. This site at Figueroa and Harbor had a previously approved hotel project in 2009. It was actually a larger hotel building than what is proposed at this point. That approval expired. The applicant then applied for a new application, and it actually went to DRC numerous times in 2014 and 2015. At that point, the applicant stopped the project, partially because the Coastal Commission had quite a few additional reports that they wanted out of the project for the CEQA analysis. In recent times, the applicant has reopened the project and wants to move forward, and the design before you is basically the same design as when it came forward in 2014 and 2015. But the applicant wants to get the pulse of the DRC at this time before investing more time and efforts with his architect to move through more of the details of the project and take it through the rest of the process. The applicant is going to come forward and present their slides. Overall, staff believes the project is well designed, and while there are details to be looked at and worked through, we believe that if the DRC is able to provide feedback on the design, that we'll be able to move it forward. The project will go to multiple public hearings. It will go to the Parks and Recreation Commission because of the interface between the building and the public park. It will come back to DRC after that because we want to get a formal recommendation on the project as well as your input on that, how that interface works. We have it in a conceptual form now, but it's going to be worked on a little more. Then it will go to the Planning Commission for a final action. So this is not going to be the last time this comes to a public meeting, but if, based on the feedback you give now, that gives the project applicant's architect the information needed to move forward and refine the plans further. And with that, I can hand it over to the applicant's team and we can go through their slides.
Maybe you could just clarify the purpose or the intent of the conceptual review. We're not here really to approve a project or
That's right, yep.
disapprove a project. Can you clarify that?
Yes.
For people that are here to listen?
Yes, as you noted, Mr. Chair, the recommendation on this item is that the DRC provide comments on the project. If this were intended to be a meeting where we're asking for a recommendation that goes on to the Planning Commission, it would ask for a recommendation. This is a conceptual review. All the details of the project are not worked out to the nth degree. The design is in pretty good shape because of the past rounds of review it already went through, but there are going to be some details to work through. So if you're a member of the public interested in this project, as I said, this is still going to go through other hearings and more rounds of review.
Basically, this is a chance for us to critique the project and review it. We're not here really to design the building, but really to critique what we're going to see. And I guess the overall intent is to help the applicant move forward with this project.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a presentation.
You over here, yeah.
Take a seat here.
Yeah, I'd like the process to be as friendly as possible.
That's
You're more than
awesome.
welcome to come up.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me turn on your mics for you. Here we go.
And just for the benefit of everybody that's in the room, as well as those who might be viewing a recording of this, if you could try to speak into the mic so it gets picked up in the recording.
All right, so my name is Bob Sauvageau, RYS Architects, project architect, and have gone through the whole history of this through all the development.
And my name's Tom Holloway with KLA. I'm the landscape architect and have been with the project all the way from inception as well.
So we're happy to be at this point, and we're excited about the project. We think this is going to be a great project for the city, especially at this location. We see this as an important building. So the view that you see now on the screen is the view from the promenade across Promenade Park. So this is what would be facing Promenade Park. Next slide. So to locate the project, to the left of us, to the west is the fairgrounds. To the bottom is Promenade Park and the promenade in the ocean. To the top is Harbor Boulevard, the railroad tracks, and 101. And then to the right is multifamily development. Next slide. An aerial view, give you a better perspective of what it physically looks like now.
And I think just to interject real quick, one of the things that did happen early on, and I think it's already been completed, the jog in the park area has been evened out as a lot line adjustment. So it when we look at the plans, you won't see that jog. It's just a straight line. It basically just swaps the back part for the Hilton property and then the front part for the park. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And those have all been approved with all the regulatory agencies that needed to sign off. So that's done. Next. So here's an overview of the site, and just to orient you, the white areas are the building. The bottom is Figueroa Street, the left is Harbor Boulevard, and then on the right, that's the Promenade Park. So we have, off of Figueroa is the main entrance, drive entrance into the hotel. That diagonal crosshatched area is decorative paving. That's the vehicular access into the property, with a drop-off there that gets you into the lobby. And I'll get more into the floor plan in another slide. But just to kind of orient you to what the footprint of the building is relative to the site. Next slide. So the light gray is surface parking. The darker gray is parking within the building at ground level. The darker blue around the perimeter on the edge of Harbor and on Figueroa is retail space. And the lighter blue in the lower right-hand corner is the restaurant space. Then moving up from there, on the right-hand side, the lighter, oh great, thank you. Okay, here we go. So this area, the lighter orange, is the hotel public space that orients to the promenade park. This darker orange is back of house areas, staff, kitchen, laundry, some more back of house space over here. And up here in the yellow is the meeting space. We've got one large meeting space that can be divided, a boardroom, and pre-function space. Next. Second floor, the darker, the orange is all the guest rooms. These light yellow spaces are outdoor terraces. The second level is an outdoor space, and our pool is on this upper second level. This is the roof of the meeting space, which is a one-story space. And next slide, third floor. Very similar. We do have some decks here. And fourth floor. Next slide. These are the decks and terraces, and the more orange is the guest rooms. Next slide. Excuse me. This is our roof plan. You're seeing here down below at the second level where that pool deck is. And then in this lower right-hand corner, we have a roof terrace. And Tom will talk more about that and of how we're treating that. Next slide. So these are our elevations. Along the top is the elevation along Figueroa Boulevard. It's what we've done and designed, and with a lot of input from meetings with prior design reviews, is that we wanted a building that looks cohesive, but as a grouping of buildings, as opposed to one long monolithic building. So we've got these compatible different building elements. What you don't see in the flat elevation on the top is we've got a lot of articulation. The lower left one, this rendering is this space in here. It recesses in. We have a little fountain courtyard in here. This lower right elevation is the entry. This is that drive entrance that gets you into the auto court and the hotel entrance. So we've stepped back at levels to kind of terrace the building up. Next slide. And in this view, you get a better sense of the articulation of the building along Figueroa. And the fairgrounds are right here. Next slide. And back to the view of the hotel from the promenade. This, and Tom will talk more about this, this is that roof deck that's right up in this corner. You're actually able to stand here and see over this edge. The mansard roof acts as the required height of a guardrail, so you're not seeing any railing up here, you're seeing the roof, but you can actually be standing in the space and looking out. And then here, this actually is also space you can get into. It's this little roof here, but Tom can talk more about that. This is the second level that is right here in this perspective, where we have the pool, and Tom will speak to that. Next slide. All right, I'll let Tom take it from here.
Actually, can we go back a slide, please? Yeah. So Yeah, the idea is obviously with the view of the ocean and with the climate and everything that's happening out here, we want to maximize the amount of public space that's there. We've got the promenade park that we'll be looking at briefly up ahead that's in front of the building between the promenade. But these public spaces, getting them lifted up so that we can keep control on it. We've got the awesome views. You get the breeze coming through, really maximizing this rooftop element with the pool area, cabana seating. It's a spa, lots of lounge seating in there. Really creates an awesome hangout space. And then to be able up on the top, which is right above where the restaurant is, straight up from that and that tower element, is where we have an additional outdoor lounge type space to again be able to maximize those views towards the ocean. Next slide, please. This little guy is that alcove that Bob talked about before along Figueroa, which runs along here. It's a little bit large, but it's an alcove in the building to create a nice little seating area with some trees around it. We've got a fountain that ties in architecturally, so it just creates a great little kind of a cloistered space along the facade of the building. Next slide. Oh, and then we have a larger view. I didn't realize that we had it set up this way. I'm sorry. So you can start to see that better with the ocean over here, the views out, keeping the views towards the ocean. Next one. And then that rooftop space, the idea that you're really creating a nice outdoor element, and it's pulled away, close to Figueroa, so it's on more of the public side of the building. And then the next slide is going to show the whole site plan to kind of get to see how we bring it all together. Again, that roof, that pool area was sitting right up in here. The meeting room space rises up about 5 to 7 feet higher than what the pool area is, so it creates a bit of separation between the adjacent houses that are there. The bulk of the building, the way that the site is set up, encapsulates the interior parking space. And then with the way that we've designed that parking space with interlocking pavers, with shade trees, and the way the motor court comes in is to really make it feel like it's an old motor court and not just a traditional at-grade parking lot. So views from even within the hotel looking down on it, it's not like you're, I don't think this is working anymore. It's not like you're just looking at a parking lot. It's a very nice part of the site. We really wanted to activate the Figueroa frontage, so that's the idea that there's some of those small retail. We've got that little alcove with the fountain. The way that the street trees work with the architecture really starts to break up that lineality of the space and make it an engaging, enjoyable space to hang out. And then I think it's important too to understand that if this is it working? There it is. The property line, the city line between the park and the hotel is right there along the edge of the veranda. So, this is all that Pete was talking about that we still have to, we've already gone through the Parks Commission once and they were really supportive of the ideas, but that was about 5 years ago, I think. So go through that process again. But yeah, our project is from this line backwards. The little elevation that you see right here is part of the colonnade that goes around the motor court. So when a car comes in through that entry portal into the motor court, we use that trellis element to tie it in with the architecture, create that entry motor court. Then you drive out into the parking lot, and then again out onto to Harbor. Next slide. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we went through it really, really quick, just to give you a quick overview with the understanding that you're probably going to have lots of questions, and we're excited to talk to you guys about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Was there anything more, Bob?
No, that's
okay.
it.
Okay, do any of the committee members have any questions of the applicant?
All right, I'll go ahead and start. Thank you very much for the presentation. I appreciated your comment about wanting to activate Figueroa. I think that's really important. I like the fact that there are the commercial spaces shown there. My concern is with the depth of those and what types of tenants would go in there. Can you kind of explain? I didn't see any dimensions in those. I know that they're sort of long and linear and broken up a little bit. So can you talk a little bit about what the thinking is in those spaces?
Yeah, and no space has been leased yet.
Right,
obviously,
of course,
but
yeah.
As we've been designing these spaces, what we have kind of envisioned is, starting from, actually, maybe that's best to show up here. So this is a full-service restaurant, and the square footage is unfortunately too small for me to read. But it's, if I remember right, I think we got about 3,000 square feet in here. I mean,
Yeah.
it is sufficient for a full-service restaurant. Then, oops. Did I change the? No, it's me. No. Okay. Yeah, so this is all restaurant. And then what all right. So with this being the dining areas, the probably an exhibition kitchen kind of in here, plus back of house kitchen, and our loading for the restaurant off of the drive. So we're not going to tie up Figueroa with deliveries for the restaurant. This we see could be a nice coffee shop corner. Then these spaces we see, maybe that could be a bike rental or surfboard rental, where you need a lot of display space, not so much a lot of merchandise showcasing. So that's kind of what we were thinking about possible uses along here.
Exactly, and even, potentially like a snow cone sort of, or a shave ice, sorry, those sorts of smaller retail that can activate the street frontage.
Okay.
What's wrong with the snow cone? Nothing. What is the depth of the blue area there?
Okay.
Which is basically retail, right? And not the deep part, but the thinner part.
Yeah, this part.
Yeah, where you were talking about having the shave ice and bike shop.
Yeah, just
So
for
that
order of magnitude, this is a car stall depth.
Yeah, which is what, about 18?
Yeah, with the
So-
compacts are less.
So that's only about 9 feet off
about
my.
10 to 12 feet is my
Okay.
guess, yeah.
So it's
It's narrow.
It's
narrow,
yeah.
very narrow.
With
Okay.
envisioning, the kind of businesses that probably come in here would be more of the display in part, or if it is a bike rental or Segway rental or something like that, that's where they have it. But at these corners, this is really kind of the retail entrance, especially, created this nice courtyard. You come in here, and this kind of the business end of these spaces, and this is more the display end of those spaces. And then here we have another fairly large space here. This is just over 2,000 square feet, which might make a nice little day spa or something like that.
Okay. But again, that's counting kind of that whole display area for
and this, we're limited to the depth we have because of everything else coming across the site.
Sure.
And, it's Harbor Boulevard. We're really focused on Figueroa as the spine that takes you back up into downtown, as opposed to this, don't really see that as a whole lot of pedestrian activity. But we thought this might be a nice place to display, maybe even with a Historical Society of Ventura, do some, maybe even some seasonal stuff here.
Okay.
Have you had discussions with either ideas or from you as the architect or from the owner, like what would go in there? I mean, the historical sounds great, but because we have some examples of that situation in other buildings in town.
Okay.
And they may or may not be successful depending on how you look at it. So I see that as a difficult space. Have you talked to them about what ideas to put in that, only in that thin display? The other ones I understand, but the thin display on Harbor.
At this point, it's still conceptual, so no, we haven't reached out specifically to anybody yet.
No, I don't mean reaching out, just like the idea of what do we stick in there.
Mm-hmm.
other than they could have a dancing lady.
Okay. Also on Figueroa, there was one of the vignettes that was shown was showing kind of an outdoor seating in one of the recesses of the arched kind of storefront glass. I was just curious to kind of understand the streetscape section a little bit through Figueroa, and kind of how I like the idea of tables being able to be on Figueroa there.
Yeah, I think you're talking about this little area in here.
Yeah, do we have the vignettes
There, yeah,
section?
on that.
Kind of shows it on the bottom.
Yes, up in here. So this is, and again, all depending on, excuse me, which retail spaces, which retail uses take these two corners. There is potential for maybe getting some seating out here, depending on what retail uses end up there.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please,
related to that?
yeah.
What is the depth of sidewalk from the outermost colonnade arch to the face of curb? Do you know that?
This is 10 feet, and then this is 10 feet.
So we have 20 feet from here to here?
Yeah, but it's only like 7 feet to the face of the columns.
So the columns encroach in that 20 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's
18, yeah.
17 or 18 feet?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
are you dealing with a setback from the property line?
Yeah, the property line is it kind of bisects it, so that's the right-of-way line there. And then our project is behind it, so that's where I think it's, now that this is 10 feet, this is like 7 or 8 feet, and then the building is like 5 feet beyond that. So this is from the face of the building to the face of curb, it's 12, 13 feet, something like that. Over on this side, it's on the harbor side, it's deeper. It is more like 20 feet from the face of the building to the curb.
Question for staff. Is there a desired sidewalk width along there from either planning or land development?
On Figueroa Street. Figueroa Street is one of the streets in the downtown specific plan that has a streetscape plan associated with cross sections. So we would be looking that they build out what the downtown specific plan requires. I'm not quite sure the exact dimension, but I believe it's 10 or 12 feet. And we'd be looking that they do that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, just to comment on that. We did look at that, but I just realized, I don't know if there's been any updates to the standards recently.
To the downtown?
No.
Not to the downtown specific plan.
So we did look at it at the time. I just don't remember the specifics, but we were aware of that.
You're within it.
Yeah.
That feels really nice. I think if there were an opportunity to get a little bit more depth in those retail spaces, I would maybe consider that, just to make them that much more viable. They feel really, really narrow and tight to me right now, and I want those to be successful spaces as well. So maybe a consideration to think about as you move forward.
Yeah, the challenge is, with the minimum required parking stalls, we start here, and these are all minimums.
What I'm saying is pushing out closer to Figueroa with the building.
Letting the sidewalk be a little narrower.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, if that's an option, then yeah, we can definitely look at that.
Any more before I chime in? Okay, I'm going to take more of a conceptual approach, maybe something you would have seen in 4th or 5th year architecture school. Considering the unique beachfront character of Ventura, obviously you started with a blank sheet of paper, tabula rasa. How did this concept evolve? Why this design? What makes this unique and conforming to the character of Ventura?
That goes way back. When we first started with the Embassy Suites, I think the choices in the downtown, or what was being recommended was either Victorian. Oh, sorry. What was being recommended at the time was either Victorian or Mediterranean, I think. So very early on, we went in that direction.
And that was recommended by who? Who is guiding you or pointing you?
I think that was in the standards, the downtown standards, or input from the design committee. So we felt it was more appropriate to go with the Mediterranean style than something that was more of a Victorian style.
Okay. I think the downtown standards do encourage that.
And it was we were, 4 or 5 meetings with Design Review Committee prior to this, and very much their direction was pushing towards that Santa Barbara, that clean Santa Barbara style, with providing very specific direction on the corner element that you see at Harbor and Figueroa, and even the way that the tower element above the restaurant is that you see on the top. There was very specific direction that was provided through those, correct?
Yeah, and it was never really a question of the style that we had chosen and we're fine-tuning. It was more the articulation of it, things like what I mentioned, feel more like a grouping of buildings instead of one big building. And how can we take different elements of that Mediterranean/Santa Barbara style to make it look like a block of cohesive buildings in the Mediterranean style.
Okay, because I'm having concerns or problems seeing how this relates to our character. This building could be anywhere in Southern California and probably work very well. It just doesn't read to me Ventura at this point in time. What I do like about it is use of materials. This is a marine environment. It's very corrosive, and it seems like you're attuned to that problem. I assume the railings are going to be the appropriate material. I have some concerns about massing. It just doesn't seem consistent with what's on the rest of the promenade, except for the Crown Plaza has a massing issue too. If there was any way to step that back somewhat, it might make it a little bit more comfortable for people walking by. The other issue I think you could take advantage of is your roof. You had some fantastic views up there. I would like to see you activate as much of the roof as possible. That could be a great venue for restaurants or bars. You could even have a wedding up there and have the view and have the privacy that you would need. Also, everybody that lives on the hillside is going to be looking down on this hotel. And I'm sure they want to see a bunch of mechanical equipment up there. So if there's any way to locate that equipment into an equipment room and keep it off the roof, I think that would be very appealing to do that. In terms of getting to the pool or getting to that rooftop, you have a small area which is a rooftop restaurant. How would the public get to that? Would they have to go into the hotel, get on an elevator? I mean, you're going to allow public access to go up and down.
Yeah, and to clarify, it's not a restaurant. It's just a lounge. We'll probably have bar service up there.
So anybody could use that.
Yes, and where it's situated in the building, it's relatively easy to get up there, from elevator access, because all of that is in the public space in the ground floor.
Because, if this is right next to the Mission, I think I'd be a little bit more comfortable with it. It's very compatible with that style. It can work. I'd like to see maybe a little bit more color and variety. There's maybe some opportunities to use some tile, which is non-corrosive, that could, give some accent to the building. You might even use some tile and some color to define your entry point into the building as well, make it very clear where you come in and where you go out. I think that could add very much to the character. I got a lot of notes here, so bear with me. But I think the roof is probably the biggest concern that I have. You've got just a fantastic space up there, and I would hope you could fully utilize that. And economically, that could be a real plus to your hotel. I don't know if you can add some color with some banners or some overhangs, awnings, anything to give it a little bit more of a beach or a kind of a light visual type interest to it. Obviously, if you have something that moves in the wind, it just create a little bit of interest for the building. Let's see.
It probably goes without saying, it's challenging because a lot of these comments that you're making we don't disagree with, but they're the opposite of what we heard a few years ago. So it's the regime changes. It's kind of like
I was involved in the last critique that you had.
okay.
All those members are gone. These two gentlemen are brand new, and I remember a little bit what was said, but I think that is a concern. Is how many cooks do you want to have in the kitchen with this? And obviously, I'm sure the community also has questions and concerns as well. And I realize you have a client who's paying you, but in reality, the city and the residents are also your client as well. And they have needs, they have desires, they have wants. Even though they're not paying you, they still are part of this project. And I'm sure there's going to be some input later from some of the people in the audience. The dome kind of concerns me because it seems kind of Hollywood. I don't know what's inside that dome, what's going on. It's a space that has it's not a functional area up there.
It's interesting because a dome was something that some of the previous members were really pushing for.
Yeah, and I think they were asking for blue tile one time up there. They really
Yes, right.
it stand out.
Santorini.
Yeah, this whole thing's a moving target, and I understand where you're coming from. This is not an easy project. It's very challenging and it's very complex. But I don't know whether you really need that dome or not. Obviously, it's going to cost money to put it up there. You're going to have to maintain it, and you might want to think, is it really worth it to put it there? And is there support from the other members as well as the community or staff on that? Is it something that could disappear and no one's going to really be concerned about? So I think that's an issue you consider. But I try to make the building as inviting as you can to the public, especially if you have a lot of rooftop amenities. You'd want to get as many people up there as possible to take advantage of the views. It's a $1 million building with $1 billion views is what it comes down to. And same things with the rooms. Anything you can do to open up and give as much of a view to the people that are staying at the hotel in their rooms. Whether they're balconies or larger windows. I assume your windows are recessed in this. They're set back to 3 inches.
Yeah, and in the plans, if you look at the upper floors, the yellow areas are decks, but you can see, especially on the 4th floor, we really took advantage where you're going to get the better views. That I think every room on the top floor, or pretty much almost every room, has a deck or a terrace.
Okay, and they should be usable. I mean, they should be not
Yes.
just a
Right.
little 3-foot area you could go out to and put your thumb up to see which way the wind's blowing. But if you could, activate those balconies, that would be great as well. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to include in here. But, I mean, these downtown standards are good. They're kind of general. They're guiding. The roof might be a great place to have some fountains as well, or maybe some artwork, sculptures up on top. Parking. I think the standard encourages orchard, planting of trees. I don't see that being consistent with what you presented, but I'd like to see as many trees in there as possible and make it relatively very green area, very shaded area.
Yeah.
Another thing about activating the roof and using it is you're going to capture a lot of water. And you don't have to be draining down in the promenade into the ocean. So, maybe that water could be captured and used to irrigate your trees and your planting.
Yeah, and obviously we'll have the the current stormwater treatment and use requirements that we didn't have before, so that'll need to get incorporated in. I think looking at the small plan too, the way that the motor court is set up with the special paving, the whole idea was to utilize that orchard, that grid, and maximize the amount of parking that we can get in there, but then the floor material not being asphalt, not being just regular concrete, but a colored concrete, exposed aggregate, a paver material, or a combination of those things, so that it feels like an interpretation of an old style motor court that would be typical for that style of building. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm also thinking in terms of color also, because summers tend to be pretty gloomy here in Ventura.
Mm-hmm.
And having an all-white building is just going to mesh in with the gloom that comes in. So maybe some color tile used appropriately might kind of brighten things up. I think you got a good start here. And I'm hoping some of these comments are helpful. Maybe some of them you might be able to incorporate into the design. And I think we're kind of pointing you in some directions that maybe previous reviewers didn't do. But that doesn't mean you can't do them. It's a reasonable and practical. Anybody have any concerns about what I'm saying?
I just have a question. It's my understanding that we're in the question phase and then we let the public talk. Are we still going, is that something that's going to happen?
Yes, let the public talk.
Okay, because I'm not commenting because I don't feel like it's,
usually
I don't want to comment at this point. I'm done with my questions.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that I know it's a special meeting, so
Okay,
maybe it was different.
Maybe if you have concerns about what I've said or any of us, then we can do that during the discussion.
I'll do that when we deliberate.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just do want to make one comment about the roof, and I completely agree. Activating the roof is great. We're going in that direction. A challenge with the roof on a hotel, there's a lot of mechanical stuff on the roof. We have a lot of guest rooms. Each guest room has a bathroom fan vent going up. There's a lot of fan equipment, mechanical equipment. We're mandated by the state for a certain amount of roof area for solar panels, which we're going to be in a new code cycle by the time we get into construction documents, and it keeps going up. So everybody's got claims on that roof.
Well, I'm sure you got the know-how and the talent to figure that out and maximize it. I realize you can't do it 100%, but I think with a little more design thought, you could increase the activation of that roof. And obviously, there's some areas that people are not going to be standing on, like that could be all solar up there. Maybe there's a way of putting your mechanical equipment in there. But I agree, that is a real challenge, and hopefully you can somewhat meet that challenge.
Yeah. Actually, and to your point, some of that was going to go in the dome corner, some of the larger pieces of equipment. Some were limited to how far we can have that equipment from where it's servicing, but we were, hopefully get a lot of that in that corner element.
Okay, that's a good justification for the dome. Then it becomes a functional area. It's not just a piece of the structure that's up there to attract attention. It actually is functioning and doing something. No gutters, no downspouts?
There are some shown.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
Okay. So I would encourage you to handle those appropriately in the design so they don't look like they're tacked on.
Right. Well, I guess we're successful. You didn't know they were there?
No, that's the first thing I always look at.
Do you mind if I jump in? I just had a couple other questions I wanted to get to. Considerations for bicycle parking and connections to the train station, kind of getting to this idea of trying to encourage alternative modes of transportation. It's probably going to come up as you start getting into VMT analyses and things like that. So have you started to think of ways that you can incorporate particularly bike parking and maybe some other more creative ideas into this project?
That is something that we will be looking at, because that's something that's now in the California Green Building Code, and the amount of secured bike lockers and ones that we can put, more accessible in the sidewalk in the front. That is another thing that keeps going up, I've noticed, at every three-year code cycle. So we will take a look at that and see, how much we need to provide.
Yeah, and then from an operations standpoint, I'm curious if there's been any kind of creative ideas where there could be some type of voucher if people are traveling here via the train or something like that. I've seen that in other locations, and particularly with conversations with the Coastal Commission that seem to be,
To be able to provide a bike to guests, is that what you mean?
Yeah, or some type of discount if they're traveling not via car, things like that.
Oh, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, not taking up a parking stall, so
Yeah,
$4 off on your room.
Maybe this would be a great place to wait for the train.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, you're not sheltered at the train station, and maybe there's some way to go back and forth between the hotel and the train station. I'd rather wait in that hotel than be out there in the wind and the rain.
Come into the little coffee shop.
Exactly.
And then lastly, I know that there was a question from staff about, this public-private use of the park. I do think that balance is going to be really important, so that it's not fully privatized, but we understand, there needs to be some kind of separation and sharing of that space. So in this design, how do you feel that you've sort of, struck that balance and in terms of how it'll be used?
Yeah, and there have been discussions with the Park and Rec Department. Tom, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, and there's obviously still things that need to be worked out in terms of how much is reserved for the developer, the hotel owner to be able to use pieces of this, how much is open. But it's the idea, and especially after we met with the Parks Commission, was it's meant to be an open to the public park. There are some pieces of it. For instance, we've got the dining patio that's off of the restaurant. We've got another little patio off to the side that can be used as a breakout space for the meeting rooms, which would be something that would be, it's still officially open to the public, but it's kind of cordoned off. But the bulk of it, 90% of the park is meant to be open to the public, to be used for when there's a 5K. I apologize. I used to know a lot of the events that were happening in town, and I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I know that gets set up with tents, and it can be the starting point for various activities that happen, and that's really the idea. We've got a gazebo or a grandstand that's built into that to be able to help facilitate those uses. So the idea is, and ownership, the developer's completely on board that it's a public park. And it'll be maintained, my understanding is, by the hotel owner, so it'll have that kind of higher level of maintenance, but it's meant to be for the public. And then obviously with the hotel right there, eyes are on it all the time, so it's kind of easier to keep tabs on what's going on out there as well.
And then just one point of clarification, I think it was true, but essentially the restaurant, some of the rooftop bar, lounge, and then was it the pool area as well could be open to the public, obviously for to
the pool not
the pool. Okay.
And
that's just for hotel
one of the
guests.
reasons for elevating it is to make that security differentiate. That's for hotel guests.
Okay. But the rooftop bar could be
Is open.
Yeah. Okay.
Your window material?
Glass?
Are you going fiberglass?
Probably. We're looking at different things. We actually been working on a hotel in Pacifica, up in Northern California, right on the beach. So we're familiar with recent experience with the corrosiveness of salt air. We haven't gotten into a lot of the specifics, but we've actually used fiberglass, or there's a name for it now. It's some technical name, but it's basically plastic, some types of plastic that.
I don't think we're very excited about vinyl windows, but the fiberglass.
It's not.
But
you're talking about something else. It's called, I know what you're talking about. It's fibroxy, or I can't think of the name of it.
And yeah, the finish on the outside actually looks pretty good. I mean, if you don't know, if it's metal, if it's a composite material, but
It is a composite, actually.
yeah. But I mean, in appearance, it's very hard to tell.
We have smooth plaster. Any concern about cracking?
Always concerned about, and the smoother it is, the more you're going to get cracks. That's just the nature of plaster. Now, minor cracks, that's just smooth plaster. And we had one client doing a restaurant and wanted the very smooth and was on board with knowing that we're going to get little cracks in it. Now here, we're going to be doing control joints, but we want them to be minimal, and we're going to paint them out. So we're not making a feature out of those plaster control joints.
So I was going to ask about control joints. So,
Yeah.
You can, well, if they're used appropriately, it can be good. Too much is, could be distracting.
Yeah, this is not a building where we want to express them. We want to make them fade away.
Yeah. You also may be facing some bird issues too. I don't know if you've looked into that. I noticed a lot of buildings, especially the harbor, they put these anti-bird devices up, the spikes and stuff, which is very unattractive.
Bird like pigeon roosting or bird strikes?
Roosting.
Okay,
seagulls
yeah,
and
yeah.
pigeons, something that you might want to give some thought to in the design, because obviously you don't want to come back and see these spikes up there or coiled barbed wire running across it. But that can be an issue on the beach, and I'm sure
Every balcony gets a plastic owl that goes along with it, right?
They don't work.
No, I know.
There's a lot of devices. I mean, I've seen stuff in South Africa that have stuff space age lasers and stuff like that, and I don't think those work. They're shiny and they shoot bright, lights out at the birds. And I think eventually the birds adapt and they get used to it. But the birds are always an issue up there, so just something you should be aware about.
All right.
Do you have less rooms from the original? Was whatever it was before?
I'm sorry.
You have less rooms, less number of rooms, like 66 or something?
From the embassy, I'm pretty sure we have
Less
fewer rooms. I
from
think
that,
we
from
were
the one where
closer
it
to
was
two-
more of a U.
Yes. I think we were closer to 200 in that one. Here we're at 160.
It must have been parked differently because now you take more ground space for parking. Is that
It
correct?
was two levels.
Two levels. It was
Well,
two
and
levels.
It was a whole podium.
Yeah.
It was a podium before. Okay.
It covered the site,
So now you're doing a ground level.
right?
You might also want to consider some off-site signage, because when you get off the freeway, it's not going to be very visible or very apparent, so I don't know what the process is, that you may need some signs to guide people from the freeway off-ramp to the hotel. It's just something you might want to think about. I notice when you go into Montecito, the Biltmore is closed now, but there are signs when you get off the freeway that do direct you to the Biltmore. It makes it pretty easy, because you don't see it, and you don't know where it is once you get off the freeway.
Although with all due respect,
Yeah.
Google.
With
People-
everyone's apps.
People
yeah.
enter. Okay, we're looking.
I know, I was gonna say, I don't know. I know how to get there.
The kids have no problem with that.
By the time it gets built, we won't even be here.
Hey, not with that attitude.
So if we don't have any more questions, then I'm going to close this and open it up to the public. Is there anyone here, any members of the public that would like to speak on this project? And also, we're going to need speaker cards to go along with it as well.
Is preference for us to sit back?
What's best? I'd like to keep this as friendly as possible.
Okay.
Do you feel comfortable up here?
Sure.
I'm fine with it. Tony?
Yeah, I like them.
Are there members who do have speaker cards?
Madam Clerk, would you please moderate?
Okay, first comment. Sorry about that. Our first speaker will be Dolores Lyson, followed by Andy Dosev.
to the podium.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair Member of the board. I'm here in support of this beautiful project. I want you to know that I worked with the company, the Meehan Companies, for over 9 years, and I want to say that the ownership really cares about his buildings, the employees, and everything that he puts forth. Bringing a beautiful beachfront hotel to the city of Ventura will not only bring in revenue for the city, it will also mean that it's going to bring in revenue for the many shops, the restaurants that align, Main Street and the surrounding areas. It also means new jobs for the people of Ventura. And as I mentioned, he really believes in our employees, training and promoting from within. So this is a great opportunity for many who want to be in the hospitality business. Having a Hilton hotel in the city of Ventura is a great thing. Any given time, at my hotel, I work at the Homewood Suites in Oxnard, 60 to 80% of the guests who are staying with us are Hilton members. They're Hilton loyal. Hilton's been with us for over 100 years, leaders in technology with digital key, connected rooms, and people who like to travel through Hilton. So these are members that you are missing out on, that we will capture here in the city of Ventura. So I'm really excited to have the possibility of working with the board and bringing a beautiful hotel to the city. Thank you so much.
Okay, Andy Dysov. Sorry, Joseph.
Check, check. Can everyone hear me? Testing. All right. So first of all, I gotta say the design is beautiful. So I really like the way it looks. And the second part is that I planned my hat really bad. I'm not representing Surfrider. Just want to put that out there. I'm here on my own behalf. But I do have concerns about the Hilton being built right on the beachfront. So I'm sure some people here are aware in 2020 there had to be re-armoring of our coast actually right near there. And from what I understand, that is actually funding that the city does not have a lot of at the moment, like put to that. I could be wrong, so please do correct me if I'm wrong about that. And I'm concerned with sea level rise, with the ocean always being there, that constant armoring will be needed down the line. Obviously, this is most likely not going to be something that falls on Hilton. It will most likely be something that falls onto the city to continuously repair over time. So I don't know if this is a question and answer type of thing, or if it's just a common thing. Would you all be able to answer? Is it just a cut, or?
It is just a public comment, but we're happy to contact you separately to talk more if you have questions.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think the second comment I did want to bring up, and I don't know if you already covered this, apologize, is just water treatment and just waste treatment from the hotel. So I do want to bring that. I'm concerned about that. I am an avid surfer. C Street and the pier and the cove I frequent very often, and I'll be very concerned if there's a lot of wastewater going into the ocean from that. And that is all that I have. Thank you so much.
May I ask him a question? Is it okay if I ask him? Can I ask him a question? I just didn't hear what he said. What was the event in 2020 that you said?
So in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, I don't know the exact location, but between the Red apartment complex and the apartment complex right next to it, there had to be re-armoring of the coast because there was cracks concerned.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. I just didn't know what you said.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I'll throw a question at you. As a surfer, would it be appropriate if you're going to use that restaurant to have a place to put your surfboard and maybe secure it?
Not really, no. I generally don't leave my surfboard out. People just take them sometimes.
But if you could secure it outside?
I mean, I'm a local, so still no. But I can maybe see it being as you're out of town.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
George Amendola. You'll be followed by Robert Sterling.
Hi, good evening. My comments are in support of the project. I have a question, though, about the agenda item compared to what was visually displayed, about the project number. Are we talking about the same project number? Because on the agenda item, It's listed as 14,608, but the project on the slide was 8165. So can we have some clarification on that, please?
Yes, the project listed on the agenda was incorrect, so it is the 8165 number.
So going forward, any consideration will be for 8165 and anything else?
That it's 8165 will be the
Thank
project
you.
number. Yep.
Hearing the comments about the gentleman who was just before me about wastewater and going to the ocean and, shoring up and sea level rise, that's a concern, but I'm sure it's a concern for the other projects that are there now and with some of the plans that the city has coming up. My concerns are more about lighting facing the ocean at night. It was a similar concern that I expressed about Hawaiian Gardens or Hawaiian Village. I forget the name of that project on the hillside. Number of kelvins, I think, for light emissions in the evening. Also, rooftop appurtenances are an issue for residents who live on the hillside. I think the project visually looks great. Architecturally, the design is great. It's commensurate with what I would expect with staying at a 4 or 5 star hotel visually. And if that's the audience, which I think is important to understand who the audience is, who would be staying there, how that would attract business to the city of Ventura, tax sales revenue, et cetera. I think those are also things that should come into the discussion when I hear off-the-wall comments from the chairman about coloring and design and personal preferences. I don't think that's necessarily fair to the developer, who I believe has been trying to develop this property for 20 years and has jumped through all kinds of hoops. It's offensive to me as a resident to see a business owner come in and having to deal with subjectivity on a whim, not taking into consideration prior guidance from previous committees, including previous city councils. So be fair to the developer, in addition to being fair to the community. My biggest concern about the project is the attraction for vagrancy and homelessness on Figueroa and Harbor. I think it's great that you have a lot of retail alcoves and design built into that, but again, I don't necessarily know if you understand who your audience is. What are those retail businesses going to be servicing? What happens at night when they're closed down? Is it just going to be a place for people to sleep who are homeless or have issues? There's a lot of drug issues, a lot of issues around the fairgrounds in the night and the evening and that whole area along the promenade. Don't make it attractive to create more issues. Thanks very much.
Robert Sterling.
Thank you. From what I understand, this is not a podium for questions. It's just for comments. Because if I might have the benefit of one question, if by a show of hands of the members of this committee, do they share the vision of the future of Ventura by this project? Those of you who do, if you would just raise your hands. Thank you, because I don't either.
I don't understand the question.
Does this type of a structure represent what you see as the future of Ventura?
And as
It's
we
just
stated,
going to be there for quite some time.
It's not a Q&A or interactive, so you don't have to respond.
Well, for the record, I didn't see a show of hands. I hope I didn't confuse you by the question. Other than that, it would be interesting to know if by the nature of your comments, it sounds as though to me it's kind of a done deal. It's just working out the details of tile and fountains and more lighting at night, the assumption that the beach needs more surfers in the water, that the pathways need more bicycles riding around there, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want people to ask themselves, what is the net of this in terms of revenue in the end when you're talking about congestion and more pollution, and I guess the homeless problem, and more lighting on the beach at night, things like that. And I would encourage you to engage more dialogue with members of the community as you go forward. I have a respect for architecture and for people who develop things, but just as a personal opinion, and excuse the plosives, as a personal opinion, this might be best left for Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo. There's plenty of development like that further south. And when somebody mentioned their vision of, we thought Victorian or we thought Mediterranean, well, I tend to think of Southern California beach community, and I would hate to create more Santa Monicas, more Venices here in this particular unique community. And I've lived here since '95, and I've seen a lot of those changes, and I see the congestion on the freeway. I see the congestion building on Harbor Boulevard, et cetera. So as a quality of life issue for someone who's lived here a long time, I see it as a negative. Although there are positives, potential positives too, but net, I think I wouldn't support it. Thank you.
That's all the speakers we have for tonight.
Thank you. We're going to move forward. I'm going to close the public hearing, and the members of the DRC can discuss and hopefully come up with a motion.
Mr. Chair, on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, you won't need to make a motion.
Okay.
It's conceptual, it's comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's discuss. We can clarify some of our issues.
Tony, you want to go?
I'm still developing my thoughts, so if you're ready, please.
So actually, I think that the speakers were all really good, and I think that all of that should be taken into consideration. I really am. I think that I thought that the speaker was saying actually less lights on the beach, but the third speaker then said something about more lights on the beach. But I think that the light issue and light pollution is a big issue. We should have no uplighting. I think that should be demonstrated in your presentation. I'm okay with the direction. Do I see it as I'm going to answer his question. If I see a vision of Ventura, not necessarily, but not all parts of every property in Ventura is going to be my vision. And it doesn't. And I'm not really going to talk about the style because it feels to me like you came about the project in sort of the right way. I would ask that what is it about this project that's Ventura? Ventura is very Ventura. As quirky of a little town that we have here, it is very much like the beach town, and I think that it would be nice to have that addressed in the building and shown how that's going to be done. I think that the massing's okay. I do think that the ins and the outs of the building work, and I think that the vagrancy problem in the area and the drug use problem in the area, which there is an issue there, a lot of it is because there is no building there, and we will have eyes on the street, eyes on the parking lot across the way. That hopefully someday that will be something, since they annihilated an entire town that used to be there. It would be nice to have, something back there again. There used, that I'm sure you know the history of that area. I think I would like to see. I'm okay with the direction, so I would like to see it go. Just more details. I'd like to know about the dome. What is the dome? I'd like to see those shown. What are the window details? And this is purely aesthetic, but it does matter, like the depth of the windows and what the colonnade is. I'm a little concerned about the depth of the retail area, and I would like to see a little thought about how that would be occupied. And I'm sure as an architect and as an owner, you've thought about that because you don't want something sitting empty, and then what you would actually do in what looks like a window case on Harbor. I would like to hear less about what the code, what CBC required versus than what's best for the people. And I think when I get a little concerned when I say, I understand the parking, form follows parking. Unfortunately, it's the way it is. But the reason why I would like to see things done is more for what it's like for that person walking to the beach, going to hopefully grab a bike out of there. I do think that Tony's question about how many bike parking, how much accessibility, mobility other than a car would be great, because they're really close to downtown. I mean, they can walk to Tony's, but then they could also maybe ride a bike downtown. They can ride up and down the coast. I think that that's really important, and that should be addressed. And that is a design issue. Just like the surf rider person, sorry, I don't remember your name, said that wastewater what we do about rising tides. Those are design issues. Those are all design issues as much as where we're going to put a downspout or whether we use aluminum versus fiberglass. So I'd like to see, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how those things are going to be addressed. I do agree with the Chair about mitigating the roof mechanical and mitigate that as much as you can. I know you're not going to get rid of it all, but try and mitigate that. The more solar, the better. If you can cover it up with a solar panel. And put in the specs for fiberglass wrapping on all of your stucco, and you won't have to worry near as much about your cracking. I'd rather see it done that way than with control joints. Control joints are great and important, and they're needed, but you're also going to do it with fiberglass. We can do most incredibly smooth plaster. I do think it should be smooth plaster, and I think you should call out what that is, the color, whether it's integral, whether it's painted, and those type of details. That should be in the next phase, like that should be your material phase. It can show those type of things and some sections, cut some sections through some important areas like your drive-in colonnade, or what'd you call it, the motor court going through and how that feels. I'm really interested and I'm really happy that it's going to Parks and Rec, because that's an incredibly important piece of it, to be at the beach. And that park is used all the time. Earth Day puts tents up. The end of 5Ks, 10Ks end up there. We use that a lot. So that's a really important juxtaposition of a building next to a public space and how that's going to be used. And I'd like to really hear what Parks and Rec have to say about that, because that's key, as you know. I guess that's it. I personally like the direction, and I think that the masking and all that is okay. As we'll hear and we can discuss. But Tony,
great.
I'm done.
Thank you. My thoughts are, I think the bones are looking great. I think the overall massing, the articulation, building character, I think all of that is really nice. There's a lot of variety, a lot of undulation in the roof forms. You've got parapets, you've got sloped roofs, you have the architectural sort of elements at the corners that anchor it. I think those are successful. I particularly like the tower element that is actually functional. The dome looks really nice. I think, I'm leaning toward yes, but I'd also kind of like to understand a little more about, the detail of how that would be constructed. Some of the things that I have more concerns with are the details. Is it right now, and I understand this is conceptual and you haven't worked out a lot of the details, but this looks like kind of the least offensive building that could make it through right now. And I think if you could lean into some of the things that would make it feel more Ventura. I know right now, conceptually there's kind of one homage to the fact that that's like the most popular surfing beach in Ventura. You've got a little surfboard, but sign that's kind of shown there. I think if you can really give some critical thought to those types of elements, and make it something that we as locals look at and we see ourselves in, I think that would be successful. I like the idea of going to the museum and putting kind of interesting pictures of what it used to look like down there in those display case windows or things like that could be just kind of lend some local flair to it. I like the idea of public art in the park, some type of public art component there. I think that, again, getting back to that idea of balancing the public and private use of that area is really important. I could see, I know the speaker didn't think he'd want to put his board anywhere and grab a drink after a surf, but I'm an avid surfer and user of C Street, and I think that'd be great. Maybe a foot washing station, wash the sand off your feet or something like that. Just thoughtful things that could actually be used by people who are riding their bikes down there or using the space and not staying at the hotel, I think would be good things to think about. Connections to the park, the train station, and the fairgrounds are really critical. I'd like to see those when you return, how those would look and feel. Again, getting back to how does it feel if somebody's gets off at the train and wants to walk to the beach or walk downtown, those types of things. Details, I'd like to see a color and materials board. I believe that some additional materials, stone or tile accents, could be added, particularly on the ground floor level. We've got a lot of painted plaster right now that's kind of anchoring the base of the building. I'd like to see some additional accents. I think the gutters and the downspouts should be an architectural element rather than trying to hide them into a building. I think that's when they start to look pasted on, but if you can kind of give them a contrasting color and actually deal with them in a unique way, I think that would be successful. The columns at the upper floors kind of look like they're floating to me. Maybe just give that a little consideration, maybe show a detail of how that would look and function.
Specifically where, the columns?
These columns on the balconies of the fourth floor.
That center picture up there?
Right.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I would typically expect to see a column that kind of dies into something, and maybe the others don't agree with that, and maybe I'm looking at them too closely, but they kind of seemed like they were floating and hanging out there.
I concur with that.
Yeah.
Let me interject. We're a surf community, and this is just a wild idea, and I'm spreading it out, but if stuff on the columns incorporated a form or a shape that reflected that board, that could be very interesting. But then again, it might not be.
That reflected
The shape of a board.
Oh, a board,
Instead of a traditional type of column, maybe there's a way somehow incorporating that form of the surfboard into the architecture. Obviously, you don't want to overdo it, but maybe some type of small statement. That could even be in the paving. It could be somewhere. But we are a surf community, and I think we need to recognize that somehow. And I mean, that's your challenge, not mine.
It's also really
can I comment?
Please.
I'd have to open up the public comment.
All right.
It's ridiculous. Please, that's inappropriate.
Okay, I'm inappropriate. Thank you.
There's interesting public art, maybe just as an example, on the parking structure downtown as you drive into it. That's, I think, kind of interesting. Maybe just not saying to put that anywhere, but to use that as sort of inspiration.
Maybe in that case area too, because I mean there's opportunity for public art there.
Yeah. The signage, I know it's not detailed. It's probably not going to be approved as part of this project and would likely come separately. But if you can start thinking about, I don't know, how does that work? Do you do like an overall sign program, or is it just kind of individual? A sign program would have to be approved? Okay.
Yeah. It's a separate permit application.
It's separate from this, but those are really unique opportunities to create some flair and some intrigue and uniqueness. I think lighting, I think that's a great comment about not shining lights on our ocean at night. So I would recommend that all the lighting be full cutoff, downward facing, no up lighting anywhere on the project. Landscaping, I'd like to see more canopy trees in that parking lot. I tend to see it like one larger tree every 10 spaces or something like that. I think there were just those couple of back rows where you could, without losing a parking space, maybe just introduce some kind of diamond-shaped tree wells in there. And then I do think we really need more bike parking, kind of a bike parking plan, long-term and short-term parking that could be lockable, secure for people that are staying at the hotel, and then some short-term kind of for people that are visiting for the day. I'd also like to see a streetscape section of Figueroa particularly, and some of the improvements that are going to be made there. Those are my comments.
Well, I'm going to go last, and I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I'll just make a few comments concerning some details. You may have to consider copper or stainless steel for your gutters and downspouts or any type of flashing. I don't think galvanized is going to work very well for you out there. I don't have any doubts that you'll be able to handle the water drainage. I think you've got the skills and you're aware of the issue, so I don't see that as a concern. One thing, well, I didn't notice this, but probably when you give us the details, there should be some car charging stations in your motor court as well. And right now, if you walk the promenade, you'll see there's a lot of people on electric bicycles going up and down. Maybe it's possible to have a bike charging station as well. I think that's an issue that we're going to see more and more people riding those types of bikes up and down. Again, I'd like to see a little bit more color, a little bit more interest in the architecture. I mean, it's going to be your design call on how you handle that. That's about it.
Are there colors that are actually called out in these plans?
I just see basically white and top.
Okay, so that's something that should probably come next with the materials board. I think that Tony said, same as how I felt about it. Yeah, it would be nice to see what all the materials are at the base and the center.
It's like the railings. I don't know what color the railings are. So.
Yeah,
and we'll see that later on, I'm sure.
I had that on my list. Hopefully, you can actually detail what the materials and the railings are. I think the Juliet type of whatever those balconies are called, that type of thing, because that's going to matter, how it weathers and how it wears, also how it looks.
So in the minutes, you're not going to capture any of our statements. It's just basically up to the applicant to take notes of what we addressed.
In the minutes, it won't have an exhaustive list. We are taking the notes and we're going to transcribe what they are so that we can share it with the applicant and make sure we're on the same page.
I think I just want to make sure that the overall broad stroke of the building and where you're at is a good stage. I mean, the building's where it should be, parking's tucked around behind. The massing was, I wish it wasn't quite as massive, but it's okay. And that is all done really well. So I would just like to see you take it and present it to the next level and show it and try and just take it to that next level of presentation so we can understand a little bit farther of where it is. But I think the broad stroke is fine. It's good.
So we don't motion. We don't need a second. We don't need to call the roll. So I think we've concluded.
We have.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll move forward to. Thank you very much. I hope we've helped on this.
Yeah, comments are helpful.
Yeah. As I said, we do want you to succeed. We do want you to move forward with this. And I think the three of us are willing to do all we can in the process. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Move forward with staff communication.
Thank you, Chair, committee members. We'll be reaching out for, if we do have projects that are ready for June, we will reach out and look for a date that works via email. And so right now we will be canceling the next scheduled meeting in June and reach out to see if there is a date that works for everybody.
Okay. If there's no more further staff communication, I'm adjourned the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for coming.